All right, good morning, mortgage coach and sales boomerang community. It is Friday mastermind time, which means every Friday, 9 o'clock, we will be masterminding. Robert just told me that we have the 300th edition of this coming up. So show 300. Robert, when is the number 300?
On September. September 16th.
Boom. So mark your calendars, guys. September, did he say 16th or 13th?
16th.
16th.
We'll get that on the calendar. We'll start promoting it. We're going to have the 300th show of this mastermind that Todd Bookspan and I have been doing for 300 times. And Deborah Bird has, I don't know how many times. We're going to have to figure that out, Deborah, how many times you've helped collaborate. We'll be celebrating some of the guests we've had, some of the biggest takeaways we've had. So mark your calendars. Today's mastermind is going to center around Kristin Messerli is our special guest. And her and I both spoke at the experience.com event in Nashville yesterday. For the past 2 days, I actually spoke on Wednesday, flew home on Thursday. Kristin gave a keynote yesterday. And here's a little backdrop, guys. I have a tremendous amount of respect for the research Kristin does when she puts slides together, when she puts presentations together. It's like let's just say she delivers content for an hour to you. You're getting like a week's worth of research. Like she just nets things out. And not only that, and I think Deborah can testify to this, is that you're always getting content that you can share in the marketplace. It's original. It's while she is aggregating research that you may have heard from this stage or other stages, she's always got something new, and she always puts it in a new way that's valuable and unique. Deborah, what are your thoughts on that?
Well, what I appreciate so much is it allows you to frame your messaging in a way that, context is important, but it also addresses the pain points, the real pain points, so that you can create better content. So I've been a fan. I've said it a million times. She saves me hours of research because I have people like her who can pour in to me or create reports like she has. And so I just, thank you and appreciate all that you do for the industry.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me. I'm really excited about this topic, and I always appreciate the opportunity to be able to share stuff that I get excited about and have spent some time researching. So,
right on. So before we bring Kristin officially on stage to give her presentation, there's one more thing I want to say to frame today's conversation. Is the topic is trust, and like there is no more important topic for your success, for our success as an industry, than trust. And Kristin's going to walk us through what trust is, what trust isn't. She's going to share some like mind-blowing stats. It just what an opportunity is in the market to build a trusted platform. So I also want everybody to listen. I want you to take notes. And then I'm going to want everybody post this event to do like a trust audit on your mortgage experience. So we'll get more to that in a few. But Kristin, just in case, well, not just in case, we always have new loan officers coming into the industry, and there's always new people tuning into this. Just give a minute on your backstory, and then let's get into the topic at hand.
Yeah. So let's see. I started a company called Cultural Outreach after I'd worked as a social worker and worked primarily in underserved communities, doing a lot of financial education and housing coordination. And just saw a big gap between like banks and lenders and what was being provided in the market. And so I started Cultural Outreach doing a lot of the financial literacy education, and it turned into next gen research and a lot of communication techniques and that type of thing. But I sold that a couple of years ago to NAMBA and joined experience.com. And now I'm our VP of strategy at experience.com, where we focus on helping companies leverage voice of customer to build trust and reputation and better experiences.
Love it. And if you don't know about experience.com, check it out. It is the leader in reputation management. Great way to, one, make sure you get a lot of reviews, like the people that use that platform get more customer feedback, and they're able to manage that customer feedback in a way that helps them deliver better experience and help them use it in marketing and sales. So check it out. And it also integrates into Mortgage Coach in a pretty cool way. So, all right. Well, let's start with like, why did you do this? Because, you know, you are the chief strategy officer and you knew you had an hour on stage and you could have done anything you wanted. Why did you pick this topic, and why did you spend, you know, I'm sure you spent a lot of hours in doing it. Like, why?
Yeah, sometimes I like kick myself a little bit and I'm like, okay, you could have done something much easier. You could have done something you already presented on, but I can't help it when I kind of get this insight. And it actually came from us doing the State of the Industry report, because I started doing a little bit more research into, I came across some research on distrust. And I did publish the 2020 and 2021 Next Gen Homebuyer Report, where we found that distrust was a huge factor when we were looking at next gen homebuyers. And so that had piqued my interest. I started digging into it a little bit more with the State of the Industry report. And then I couldn't let it go. I realized that there was this big opportunity. And truly, I think it's a huge opportunity in the amount of distrust we have in the market. And so I started doing a lot more research and crafted the presentation that we did, or that I did yesterday at our summit. And again, it's because it felt like the right place to share something that was kind of, it's not totally innovative. Like, I feel like it does incorporate, like you said, some of my past research and things, but it frames it up in a different way that I think we haven't been talking about.
So just a footnote for anyone listening, make sure you check out our halftime report. It's the 2022 halftime report. It is a blog in the Mortgage Coach website. If you don't follow our blog, that's a place where I'm putting a lot of attention and time as the Chief Innovation Officer. So check out that. We'll put a link down below. And then it sounds like, Kristin, we're getting, you and I are going to have a little working session to upgrade the halftime report. Maybe we should put, you know, a link to your presentation or a link to this conversation in there. So let's get after it. You know, why don't you, however you want to have the conversation, whether you just want to pull up slides or, you know, the show is yours.
Okay, awesome. Yeah, I will share some of my slides and just kind of walk through a few of the areas that I thought were most interesting and valuable.
And Deborah, feel free to slow her down, speed her up, jump on anything you think is important.
You got it.
As always. So the first area that I was talking about is just kind of framing up what we call trust and how we think about it. And I wanted to talk about that in three different ways. One being that whenever we are thinking about trust, it's built a lot of times out of a really great experience. And I used the example of Mortgage Coach, which if you've been on calls with me, I've talked about this many times, but when I was buying a home last year, I was super skeptical, had a lot of anxiety going into it. And then I got a rent versus own, and it allowed me to really separate out my emotions from the logical decision of buying a home. And I felt like that was very transformative, got me over that first hurdle. And then I was still very anxious looking at my loan options, and I got a total cost analysis. And that also, that was one of those wow experiences where I immediately I just started working with that loan officer, and that built trust in a second, 5 minutes technically. And I texted a big group thread of friends saying, I've got the perfect loan officer for you. And so, sometimes trust is built over time, like in the third component that I talk about, consistency and reliability. But sometimes trust is built really fast with an incredible experience, especially in a moment where there is so much, distrust and that type of thing. And then the other area that trust is built is through referrals from others or recommendations from others. And so when we think about trust, I want to consider that kind of consistency and reliability across the experience, but also in those specific moments. But this is just to frame up how we talk about the way that trust is built in the market today. So trust determines 70% of consumer decisions. I feel like it's got to be higher than that, but the majority of our decisions as consumers, trust is a big determining factor. And there is a really big gap between what we think whether we think our customers trust us and our customers' perception of that. PwC did research, I think it was last year, that showed that 87% of executives thought that their customers highly trusted their brand, and only 30% of their customers agreed. And so, we might think of that as like, okay, yeah, that's whoever else, but I do think the amount of distrust, which I'll share in a second, is so much more than what we even expect. And that gap between what we feel is accurate and what is actually happening around that trust is costing a lot of money. Consumers are 7 times more likely to purchase a brand that they trust, and they're also more likely to spend more for companies that they believe in or that they trust. And I think, that's very clear. Whenever I was buying a home, again, I would absolutely pay more for someone that I trust. And especially when you're thinking about making the biggest financial purchase of your life, trust is just a huge factor. And actually, the Friday call that I was on with Dave, with Giuseppe, our number, I can never say his last name, Bagliatoli, maybe. Anyway. Okay. He was saying that I just loved the way he talked about how he's our number 1 top performer in customer satisfaction across 40,000 plus loan officers. And he talked about how he shared reviews at the very beginning of the process, and that and he doesn't have a problem with consumers, for the most part, rate shopping him. And that's a huge problem in the market today. Most people have a big problem with that because of kind of anxiety in the market and the way that the purchase market is, like their consumer behavior. And so that area is just a big part of thinking about how much time that's costing you, and obviously revenue.
Hey, real quick, let's pause real quick here.
Yeah.
And if you don't mind going back one slide, 2 things I want to connect on, and Deborah, feel free to do. Is this one slide? Oh yeah, this slide, and I want to just pause on this, guys, where the difference between your perception and your customer's perception. And I want everybody to like personalize this. I want you to really ask yourself, what do you think? Like, forget that this is a aggregated study of executives, and I just like what do you think what your customers trust you, and then what do you think it really is? I want you to really challenge your own thoughts with the experience that you're delivering, the process that you're experiencing. What is the number? And Deborah and Denise, this also might be kind of fun to do some type of a survey of our community and of loan officers, and have a version of this in a few weeks where it's like loan officers think this, but their customers are really this, so like we personalize this even more. Any thoughts on that, you guys?
Well, I was thinking even beyond the clients, their partners, like their referral sources, how much trust do you have from them? Because that's your repeated or annuity of income that sometimes they forget to assess those relationships too.
Yeah, and I was actually just thinking that I'm putting together the survey questions for a 2022 Next Gen Homebuyer Report, and I was thinking it would be really cool to be able to have this data for the mortgage industry. But I'm surveying Next Gen homebuyers, and so Deborah, if you can take that other side of that, we could definitely put this together.
Yeah, that would be a cool collaboration. And then I also want to insert something right now, because I did my presentation not yesterday, but the day before, and it was all about how to optimize conversion and customer satisfaction scores. And I spent more time than I typically do. While I did take parts of a presentation I've given before, I spent some time knowing that, hey, I'm come to experience.com, and I'm going to center it around Giuseppe, and because the three of us had interviewed Giuseppe several weeks ago, and I read the transcript. So I read the transcript, so I invested at least an hour there. And then I invested at least 4 hours in just repackaging slides, creating a few new ones, and trying to really build a conversation around remember guys, Giuseppe was number 1 out of how many loan officers?
40,000.
40,000. And it wasn't like he did it 1 year. He's been number 1, 3. This was his 3rd time, and he's been in the top 10 every time that the reports existed. So this is like, and guys, this is the other piece. He does over $200 million a year in business. So like he does this at scale, he does this consistently. And so I think it really bears the thought that we need to unpack the little micro things that he does. In Six Sigma, they call it moments of truth. There's these little moments of truth where everybody else doesn't do it, but in Six Sigma, to have a flawless execution experience, you identify these little moments of truth and you make sure you do them. And like one moment of truth is Giuseppe is inserting reviews into his sales process. He's not just, I have them, I hope they see them. No, he's thoughtfully, intentionally putting a breadcrumb into those noted. He's doing a TCA for everyone. What are all the things he's doing to do that? And then I want you guys to unpack, where are you? And then let's figure out what are the little things you can do to improve trust in a very intentional way.
I forgot we didn't talk about it after, but I loved that presentation you did. I also loved the interview that we did with Giuseppe. He's so humble, but just shares very, very practical stuff. And so, yeah, the way that went into the presentation was really, really great takeaways there.
Thank you.
So what's interesting, coming back to this, whenever, this is kind of like industry agnostic. And so I think a lot of times in the industry, we can feel like, oh yeah, but my consumers really trust me, and it's a different mentality. But when we did the 2021 Next Gen Homebuyer Report, we surveyed over 3,000 Next Gen homebuyers, and we found that a third of them said that they didn't, or 2/3 of them said that they did not think lenders were trustworthy or reliable. So this is right in line with the same research. Only a third of them said that they did think lenders were trustworthy or reliable. So this was what really first piqued my interest around distrust and looking at how high that level of distrust is in the market. And I've interviewed millennial homebuyers for many years now, and they continually bring up this level of not just distrust with lenders, but also in the housing market, and fear that the crash is going to happen again. And I attributed a lot of this distrust to the 2008 financial crisis, and thought, especially millennials entered adulthood during or right after the financial crisis. And so this is why there's this much distrust, but especially in this year, this says, yeah.
Well, I was going to say, can I ask a quick question? Is this home buyers who already bought, or was this right before they were going to buy? They felt lenders were.
Question. This is both. This is actually people that were already in the process of buying, like right about to buy, or people that had just recently bought. But that was what was kind of crazy about this data, was like, yeah, this is already people that are in the market. This doesn't even include all the people that have been freaked out about buying and are still outside of the market,
Yeah. Wow. That's incredible. Okay.
Yeah. I would like to, and if anyone on the call has thoughts on what needs to be included in the 2022 Next Gen Homebuyer Report, very open and interested in your thoughts. But and Deborah, I'm sure you have some ideas on that, but I want to mirror a lot of last year's to some degree, but I think I might want to expand it out to include the next gen population that is not in the market, just to see what would this distrust be for non-home buyers at this point too.
I would think it's got to be larger, don't you?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Which is even more frightening.
I know. Yeah. Yeah. And so, I've shared this stat a lot, and actually the Mortgage Bankers Association co-sponsored with National MI, and everyone was kind of like, maybe we don't highlight this stat so much. Like, this is not, this is not a positive reflection, but I really think that this is something we need to look at, not because lenders have done a bad job. This is a really anxious market, and consumers. But like I said, I thought it was all really associated with our experiences, which I do think that has a big part of it. But what I started realizing recently, when I came across that research I said a few weeks ago, was that, distrust is happening across all industries. And I think, it kind of hit me like, duh, of course, but we've lost trust and faith in government, faith-based institutions, media. Technology has become a big one that we've been talking about more lately. Our data is getting taken at the point of doing a stupid Harry Potter quiz to like our period trackers, or, like everything is, now we're being more skeptical of like what data is being taken, and data breaches and all of that. And one of the things that I got in so many holes of research around each industry, but 2/3 of people said that they don't think we can debate anymore. I think that's not a surprise, but that's increased significantly recently. And then is it faith-based institutions? So only 4 in 10 millennials say that they identify with a major religion at this point, which is 20% lower than it was just 7 years ago. And so, that might feel irrelevant, but in the context of all of this, we're just seeing this distrust in all levels of institution and authority just kind of diminish. And we see more and more scandals coming out around each of these areas. We've lost a lot of faith and trust in higher education and public education. And then healthcare is one that I think is very obvious, especially coming out of the pandemic, how much a loss of trust and faith in healthcare we've had. But even pandemic aside, I was thinking about how the opioid crisis and big pharma and all this stuff plays into this, but we have trusted doctors, and doctors have trusted pharmaceutical companies, and now we're still seeing 78,000 deaths a year from opioids and 128,000 deaths a year from prescriptions that people are prescribed. And so there's just like this level of it feels like kind of isolation, and just fear and anxiety around each of these areas, even when it comes to donating. So the more that we're like, oh, I can't trust in any of these things, then we feel the way that we're donating is also down. And I think a lot of that is from skepticism. So then when we look at the Edelman Trust Barometer, which is like the highest source of customer confidence and looking at general trust, this year distrust became the default. So we dropped into the below 50% in general distrust. And the US Trust Index dropped 10 points just since 2017. So this is now the lowest it's ever been, and consumer confidence is low. Consumer expectations, the consumer expectation index is significantly lower. And so as I kind of went through like I feel like a spiritual journey as I was kind of looking at all of this research, because it was like you fall into the dark night of the soul kind of situation, thinking like, okay, well, how do we navigate a world like this, and what does that mean even as consumers, to be in a world where you feel that you can't trust anyone, So I'm going to pause before I explain why this is.
Stop sharing your screen real quick. I want to fireside chat on this for a minute, guys, and really own that. Like I remember when just 2 days ago, when I was having coffee with Kristin and we were brainstorming, and she showed that, and I was just like, I think they're underestimating it. I think it's like worse than that. And it was like in my mind this clear thing that like literally in my lifetime, and I've got a few more years than a lot of people on this call, trust is the lowest it's ever been in society. And now again, I'm like an optimist and I'm also a competitor. So I'm like, oh, now has never been a better time to turn how to create trust into a competitive advantage. So I was kind of like, that's humbling, that's wow. And then I, like within seconds, I'm like, oh, this is exciting. Like, as a competitor, if you really study trust and you really think about how can I create a mortgage experience, because it's always been like, it gets great reviews, but to do that, to close a loan on time, to win a customer, to actually have, kill it with trust, there's some little things that you need to do at the point of sale. And I'm actually going to rewrite, I wrote a white paper in the early days of Mortgage Coach. It's called Mental Triggers. And I put a link down below. When and guys, this is when Mortgage Coach was like this big. But when I founded Mortgage Coach, I had really studied how to create trust in WOW. The name of the company was WOW Tools. And one of the founding principles that I was super intentional about with Mortgage Coach was, going back to, ethos, logos, pathos, all these ancient philosophies. And I'm going to break this down really simple for you guys, just to give you a couple of breadcrumbs to some ideas, is that if someone, let's say my brother just got in the mortgage business and I trust him with my life. I'd literally give him my ATM account, but he's doing the business. So he's got my trust, but because he's doing the business, he doesn't have extraordinary knowledge. He's not an expert. He's got trust, but he's new. I'm going to shop him. And then let's say there's that person on the billboard in the city that you are in, and they're a baller, they're super successful and they have extraordinary knowledge. But you wouldn't give them your bank account. You don't trust them. So you're going to shop him or her. But when you have, the both, you have the logos, the ethos, and all those, and you have them both, you don't shop them, or you're less likely to shop them. And that's like a formula of trust. So I just want to make sure we pause and recognize that this is the worst it's ever been, which if you are a science, you study how can my behaviors, and again, influence for good, you believe that if someone does business with me, they are radically better off than everybody else. They're going to get a better deal. It's going to close on time, and they're going to be a more successful human being. You do have to believe that. But guys, this is a massive opportunity for the Mortgage Coach community. So I just wanted to pause on that stat. I want you to reflect on that. Deborah, anything you want to add before Kristin goes back into slide mode?
Well, yeah, the first thing I thought of is, once you have trust, I feel a lot of people lose on the opportunity of just maintaining the trust over time. So that's where, borrower intelligence or leveraging tech beyond the transaction, whether that's HomeBot or Sales Boomerang, where you can maintain it, is important to also look at, because sometimes you work so hard in the beginning to get them to convert and you finally win their trust, all to then fall flat because you never stay in touch afterwards, or you're the loan officer who doesn't have borrower intelligence where you're getting alerts where you can proactively reach back out to them or to the real estate agent to give business back. So, protect it once you have it.
Yeah.
That's
And that brings up another thing. So you could kill it with trust. Before you got the social security number, you trusted them, you gave them the total cost analysis, you wowed them with advice, you're trusting them. And then when they get the needs list and how you set expectations, all that trust can evaporate. And that's another thing Giuseppe did a really good job with. He gets the trust with reviews, he gets even more trust with advice and value. And then when it comes to the transaction part, the pedal is on the metal, and he's just, I'm sure the way he's number one is he's identified probably 6 to 10 things that build trust, keep trust, and close with trust. And then he's created an experience that does that consistently. And my guess is that those 10 things, most people probably only do 3 to 5 of those things. And other people don't even know what those things are. So,
well, and to your point, Dave, on that, so much with social media is meant to help influence trust. To me, it's a way to stay top of mind, but also create instant credibility and increase your conversion to influence that action that when someone's referred to you and they're given your name, like if I'm given Kristin's name, you better believe, especially the millennials and Gen Zs, they're going to research you. They're going to go online and they're immediately going to land on your feed. And where most people are so isolated on singular posts, they don't realize that when they land on your feed, they're going to scroll for a couple feet. And that's when they're going to make their judgment on you. And it's so hard to quantify that decision of that behavioral metric of what influenced them to make the decision to now trust you enough to contact you. When on a lead form, it may say, oh, my real estate agent referred me, but that wasn't what influenced them to get them to make the decision in the first place, which is why people like Giuseppe, we will automate his emails that he gets from experience.com on his reviews. And we immediately turn it into a social graphic that we can post everywhere, that's real pretty with his branding, just to create that credibility and trust before they ever even contact you, but also increase that conversion to get them to.
So let's think of something, Kristin and Deborah. Let's try to name, towards the end of this, some known, like whether it's a touch point or it's a discipline that. Let's think about Giuseppe that he's doing. Like we know he's being he's using a reputation management program. He's using experience. So he's got some automation to make sure he's optimizing the collecting, the managing, and the promotion of those. We know that he's, verbally bringing those up into the conversation. We know that he's asking questions beyond the transaction and delivering a total cost analysis. We know that he's intentional about social media, so that, if no matter what channel that the typical person goes on to, he's legit. So he knows check. We know from interviews that he is very diligent and thoughtful about setting expectations with the clients so that they get bad news fast. And, every step of the process, they just feel like this guy is honest, this guy's expert, and they don't get surprised. Let's think about what are all the other things so we come out of this, and maybe we can even, the three of us, write a blog post together or create some content that's like, how to optimize conversion, how to optimize trust so that you optimize conversion and reviews, So anyways, well, we're at the 30-minute mark, guys. Remember, if you have questions, feel free to jump in with questions, comments, and Kristin, back to you.
Okay, this is just everything you guys are saying is so good, and it is the rest of my presentation. So it's really awesome. I felt almost overwhelmed with things I want to say around all of that, but I actually have a slide towards the end because I break it down to how to create those kinds of experiences with home buyers. But then the second one is like the validations. We talked about reviews and that type of thing. But then the third one was the ongoing experience management. And I'll show you a slide that I shared from that. And then I want to go back to a couple of areas that I was talking about, but I created, or we use this wheel whenever we're talking about touch points that we can survey customers at experience.com. And what I actually want to do here is create a wheel that are those specific touch points that you have with home buyers that build trust, so these are common survey touch points that we use. But this is exactly what I was saying is what you guys were talking about is like the, at application or at the point where social media, before you even know that they're looking at you, or whenever you first get the lead and you're sending over those reviews, post close after, how are you staying in touch with them? But all of those things are what I think create that ongoing consistency and reliability that I mentioned at the first point. And if you only have that one point, that the total cost analysis or whatever that builds a lot of trust, it's easy to forget that. And it's easy to, that dissipates. It's like the honeymoon moment. And then you have to have the consistency over time, So anyway, just couldn't help but jump over to that real quick. So just kind of coming back to, I want to talk about what Dave was initially talking about is the optimism in this. So we know that this is really difficult. How do we navigate a world and win in a world where everyone is immediately skeptical? And when I've done a lot of presentations on the millennial home buyer, and people often say, it's really frustrating that people just don't believe me right away. They have to do a bunch of additional research and that type of thing. And I think most mortgage coach people value that aspect anyway. They're not going to be like, oh, don't do your research. But I will say, in general, we have lost faith in experts. And so we need that kind of extra validation. And in fact, there's a podcast I came across. I listened to the whole season while I was preparing for this, but it's Michael Lewis, who did Moneyball and The Big Short. And he does a podcast, and the recent season was on experts and how we don't trust experts anymore. And he talks about how, we used to have a lot of faith in the weathermen, and even though they're more accurate than they've ever been, we get really they get a bunch of hate tweets and stuff all the time because they're off a little bit, or the, I don't know, just like referees and different things like that. There's a lot more of a quick to anger around experts. And so anyway, as I was thinking about how we are navigating a world like this and the continued isolation that's around that, I didn't jump to Dave's optimism quite as quickly as he did just now, but I was thinking about, and I did my undergrad in theology and philosophy, and I'm a big Nietzsche fan. I have a quote of his tattooed on me, actually. And so but I had
we have to know where it's tattooed now.
Oh, right here.
Oh, okay.
Very easy, so that on Zoom calls I can always see.
Yeah.
So anyway, I thought of that famous quote of his that everyone knows, that God is dead.
What's the quote on your?
This one is amor fati, which means love of fate, which just means to love everything that comes to you, and see the world in every aspect of the beauty in everything, basically. So
that actually is a really core philosophy within Stoicism, which is
it is exactly.
I don't have a tattoo yet, but I don't know if you can see my necklace that I wear around my neck.
Yes.
This is.
Well, I feel like we need to highlight my shirt. Love is the drug.
I know, love is the drug, baby.
Super Nice Club.
Yeah. So anyway, by the way, we could just go to school on that quote on your arm, which is it pretty timely in the mortgage business. We gotta love it all. And right now there are some things that are hard to love about the mortgage industry.
Yeah. Well, it is kind of the broader message of what we're talking about today. There's dark things going on, and yet there is a huge opportunity. And like you were saying, and I was saying that this is the darkness or the skepticism, all of that is the competitive advantage now. Whenever you do feel like you're in this really dark space, when you see a bright light, you can, that stands out, and it makes it so much easier for you to capture that person as a fanatical customer and a referral partner and an advocate of yours. But I think for consumers, as we think about being in this world, the reason I brought up this quote was that he's in part talking about religion, but he's mostly talking about this loss in faith and authority. And as we think about how we've lost faith in our experts and a lot of the institutions and experts and that type of thing, our loss of faith and authority, we have to think about then, what is our hope out of that? We can continue to just swim in this kind of dark space, or what Nietzsche talks about is the hope out of that nihilism is to build what he calls the Superman. And the way that I translate that to us and in our world is that to build the Superman in the consumer. And so the way he's talking about that is that the Superman is someone who fulfills their own destiny. And so in our case, consumers we need to personalize that experience and help them feel empowered to make smart decisions for themselves. So it's no longer that you are coming in as the the savior, the expert that can make the decisions for them. It is that, and I think that one of the best examples is in healthcare. Like, a doctor can't just come in and say, this is what needs to happen. I mean, they can to some degree, but a better approach now is to say, here are your options. And now you can decide which path of treatment you want to go down. And so in that case, the consumer has the information and they can now make a smart decision for themselves. They can be the hero in their experience. So I'm going to pause on that before I dive in. I want to share that framework that I talked about around
the only thing I can say there is, like, Kristin was going through the slides with all of them, and I was going, I can't wait to see how you navigate these next two slides. And so I got to, I go like it's pretty heady stuff. So it's cool to be taking a philosophy class from Kristin Messerli. So, and you navigated that really well. And I think it's a super important point. And really, I think it's just a philosophy. Like as I think through the playbook of how to optimize conversion, trust, and customer satisfaction, you know, there's this philosophy that the customer is the hero, and that is not typical. I mean, in mortgage or real estate, we still are always trying to be the hero. I'm the hero, and even the concept that you just said of giving someone options. You know, I mean, that's one of the foundational tactics of a mortgage coach. Is you don't have to give people options. You could just say, hey, you qualify for this. It's this rate, it's that rate. You don't have to give options. Now, if trust is the goal, and if making the client the hero is the goal, and if providing with some financial literacy for the consumer, so they're actually learning how to make decisions for themselves, if that's the goal, well, then you have to give them options. So anyway, super powerful, Kristin. I'm loving this. Deborah, any comments you have after that? Those last couple slides?
Ironically, we had just posted the small clip from you, Dave, from the very first episode of the year where you talked about be the guide, not the hero. So for anyone listening, make sure you're following the Modern Mortgage Summit on Instagram or Facebook. But 2 days ago, this was just posted.
That's so funny. I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Look at that.
Well, Kristin just put this slide together like in a matter of seconds. She heard Deborah say that, and she's like, boom. So now you guys know how fast Kristin Messerli can make the slide.
Well, that is so funny. We wrote something, Dave, you and I, many years ago, I think it was like 2017, and we had the headline as this quote. And I was thinking about that whenever I put this together. So
and that was unpacking the interview I did with Donald Miller, who did this quote. Heads up, everybody. Like, I would, if you're a mortgage coach and you want to be a great marketer and you want to be a great loan officer and you want to be a good human being, like, listen to that interview, read that article. You just reminded me, Chris, that I'm going to have that article redone and put it in our blog, you know, within a couple of weeks. So
I forgot this came from your interview with him. So good.
Well, it comes from his book. I mean, this is Donald Miller.
No, but I remember it was in the interview.
Yeah. So anyway, super good. This is so good, and nice job. I dig the slides. You know, it was in Nashville, guys. So I like the whole vibe of this slide right here.
Well, the last thing I want to say before we get into more of the practical stuff around this is I thought there were two metaphors I wanted to share. One was being the Yoda and the customer is Luke Skywalker. So you're, you know, again, providing that guidance throughout the process. And the other was my first outdoor climbing experience. I was thinking about this because it was a really transformative experience, and like really what led me to decide to sell my company and all that kind of stuff. But for me, I was really nervous about climbing. I climbed in gyms, but I didn't know how to climb outdoors. And I think about how consumers are, you know, they'll start to climb the wall of buying a home or whatever and feel really lost and afraid and alone. And I had started climbing the wall and felt like, okay, I need to just step out. I've gotten a little bit up here and I'm good with that. I'm going to go back down. And, but what was interesting about this experience was the transformative part was not me reaching the top of the wall. It was my experience with my guide. And so when I got to that moment of feeling really like, okay, I don't know how to move forward anymore or upward anymore. And my guide below, who I thought was like, he was a super hardcore military guy, and we hadn't really like bonded or anything, you know, but then in that moment, he was like, he just encouraged me to a degree that and helped me for a second. He was like, just pause, breathe. You can take all the time you need. You know, he gave me that sense of safety of like, it's okay for me to feel this way. And it's okay for me to be in this kind of moment. And then he gave me some guidance, like of, you know, how to look for that next rock or how to move forward. So, and then a lot of encouragement. And I didn't feel alone. I felt like I had the advice I needed to keep moving forward. And I was safe to feel however I was feeling in this journey. And I mean, I was bonded with him forever after that, of course, but making it to the top was really about my experience with the guide, more so than even me on my own, though I was the one that ultimately got myself to the top, you know. And I think when you think about empowering consumers today, you want to be the person that creates the safe space for consumers to feel that they can be in this chaotic world and have all their questions, and provide the guidance that allows them to see what their options are and understand how to navigate it. But ultimately you're empowering them to make that climb, you know, and I think that metaphor fit really well as we think about navigating today's market.
So if you could stop sharing your screen one more time. I don't know if it will be one more time, but thank you. And I'll put a link to this in chat, but this is actually the article, and it was in 2019. You know, we'll rewrite this article, and just hearing your story, like like I knew this as a marketing strategy. I knew this as a sales tactic to drive conversion, but then, you know, hearing your experience and how, like, you know, you said, hey, it really connected me for life to this person. And it like what went through my head was, guys, we're in mortgage, you know, we're helping people get their home. And you know, now in my role at Sales Boomerang, I mean, I've always believed your database should be your number one priority. But now I have the data. Like I know now every day I get to see lenders, you know, give us their database and see how many loans they're losing. So I have a new awareness. Even the best loan officers in the country are losing more loans than they're closing from their past customer database. And then I also know, with a whole new level of clarity, because I have the data, you know, I'm the Chief Innovation Officer of Sales Boomerang, how many loans someone's going to do over the course of their lifetime. And I have the data with how many real estate transactions they're going to get. So I have this whole clarity and awareness of the lifetime value of a consumer relationship. And so if you want to be a client for life loan officer, which guys, it really could mean that you're in the residual income business. You know, like every loan you're doing, you're not closing one loan, you're closing 10 loans. And if you really execute on being the guide and doing this velocity, it's the conversion and the customer satisfaction score, like that's this. It's like what Kristin said, you could be bonded to that client forever. And I guarantee, like, if we really dissect Giuseppe's program in a little more detail, that he's probably got some of the best retention rates in the mortgage industry. He probably loses less loans than 95% of loan officers in America, because he's the guide. Like I don't know that. I'm just guessing that to be the case.
I think it would be cool to kind of merge our presentations around this, you know, and like I talked a little bit a lot more about the philosophy behind things, but then, the practical areas are, how do you empower the consumer? What are the moments that matter for you to build trust over time? And then the validation through others. But I think that getting into using Giuseppe's journey and maybe other best practices, we could really build out something that would be a practical guide there.
Looks like we have another collaboration coming.
Yeah.
So hey guys, I'm going to put a link to that LinkedIn article. It'll be in the YouTube channel. I just put it in Zoom, and we'll put that in Facebook in a minute. And stay tuned for a blog post in the Mortgage Coach blog, blog.mortgagecoach.com, where we do a remake of this. Keep it rocking. We got 10 more minutes, so let's get through those tactics.
Okay, well, I definitely want to leave time for more conversation here, so I'll just kind of briefly touch on this, but I've talked about this before, but I shared this kind of CX framework or empowerment framework, which is built on a framework I used in social work called trauma-informed care, which with traumatized people, your number one goal is to build trust with them first. And so these are the 5 components to that, which I've talked about: building that sense of safety, transparency, giving the consumer a feeling of choice and collaboration, ultimately leading to empowerment. And that clearly there's so much in there that Mortgage Coach does around rent versus own, total cost analysis, all of that, to be able to have those experiences that are empowering. But moving out of that, we move into talking about how building trust comes from others in part too. So that would be reputation. And we talked about how, of course, Giuseppe leverages reviews to build trust and builds it into his process. I shared a little bit of the data from the Next Gen Homebuyer Report too, on how Next Gen homebuyers are going to, of course, Google and social media, in addition to family and friends, to not only learn about personal finance, but also better understand who they're working with and get more information about who and how they're going to be working with that person. And then the last area that we started to touch on, and this is where I think we could expand, is just that consistent customer experience. And again, thinking about customer experience beyond just the transaction. But I shared this quote: "The consumer trust is earned or broken with every experience." And so while you may have this awesome, like I had this amazing total cost analysis, and I immediately text all my friends, like I'm a huge fan of this person. But if I am not reminded repeatedly that this person is an amazing loan officer, then it's going to be hard to maintain that. And I think, or maintain the referrals or the relationship. And of course, if there's other things that make you lose trust, that's a big factor there. So we have to think about the consistency. And I mentioned how, having a touch point, like in the middle of the process, we talk a lot about our Midpoint Survey that can be really effective in increasing conversion, because you connect with someone in the middle of the process after they complete an application and say, "Hey, do you have any questions? How are you doing?" Instead of just waiting to get their feedback when you ask for a review at the end of the closing, you want to stay in touch with them and make sure you're giving that customer a voice and a consistent experience throughout the transaction and beyond. But that was it. I did do an announcement that I do want to mention here too, that we are launching a customer insights and benchmarking program where we're going to have a bigger survey at the end of, or like after the transaction, asking the customer for feedback on every aspect of the customer journey, and then allowing our customers to benchmark that against other lenders. So that was a part of kind of creating that consistent customer experience as well.
Well, that's pretty rad. Let's make sure we get a link to that in chat. We'll have a link to that in our YouTube channel, and can't wait to see the results of that. Anyone that's in the Mortgage Coach community, one of the ways you can always say thank you to a special guest that we had for their time is to follow them on social media, give them a like so they get some engagement, And especially when there's something like this, you want to get in on this. So is this just for executives to fill out, or is this something for loan officers to fill out as well?
This would just be on a company level. So we have the survey that goes out for loan officers, and then the company is coming in and doing that evaluation. So yeah.
So anyone watching this, they should forward this to their marketing department.
Yes, exactly.
And then also, is it just something for customers of experience.com can get this, or can any head of marketing fill this out?
That would just be customers, but if you're not a customer, then you could become one and fill this out. So
Sounds like a little sales move there. What's your email, Kristin, just in case someone wants to learn more from you or ask you some questions?
Messerli@experience.com. I will put it in the chat.
And follow her on social media, private messenger, cool. So Deborah, I've been more talking than you on this one. Anything you want to unpack or anything you want to ask?
Well, just to highlight Giuseppe, I mean, Giuseppe is so coachable. And what I love about this, new platform that you're going to be, I guess, embarking here pretty soon is, the best players are always being coached, and they're coachable, which means sometimes you have to expose yourself to some ugly truths. And kind of going back to the very first slide of what is that trust gap of the perception from your customer or referral partners versus what's reality. You've got to take the time to look at even those, squigglies under the rock where it may be ugly, but you need to address them so you can pivot and you can get better. So I would just encourage everyone listening, as much as sometimes it's scary to get the feedback, it's essential for you to grow.
Yeah, and so guys, Mortgage Coach Innovation Team, as we, create an article around this and we document best practices. I'm not going to repeat what I said earlier, but Deborah just threw some more ones on, like they are coachable. They, leaders are learners. Giuseppe tunes into the Mortgage Coach YouTube channel. Giuseppe is coached by Deborah and plugandplay.com. plugandplaysm.com. He consults with her, and one gets coaching advice, and he leverages her team to make sure that he's constantly posting relevant quality content. He's using experience.com, and so you're seeing this using technology, powered by a servant leader, saying the right things at the right time. So it's super powerful.
Just to add on to that, Dave, he has learned to adopt and take the time to leverage technology so that he can focus on the highest trust building activities. And that is what I have seen across the board of the top performers or elite, loan officers out there, is they understand that, yes, it may take a little bit of a time investment to learn HomeBot or learn Lender Launchpad or seek the feedback and then go over the data so that you can be better. But that is why you adopt the technology, so that you have the humans doing the human work that robots can't do, and it frees up your time so you can go deeper and not always wider.
Yeah, he uses video. That was another takeaway in our halftime report, and he uses it to scale. He does Mortgage Coach videos. He does Instagram videos. He does bomb videos so that he can connect at scale, which I think was number 3 recommendations in the halftime report. So Kristin, we are 2 minutes to go. I want to ask you something unscripted here. And I've been asking this question. So if there was one book that was the most valuable book that you've read, and don't worry about having to be like the one, but you only get to tell us one book. But there was a book that you think is part of who you are today, and it's been the most valuable book in your professional career, what would it be?
Oh my gosh, I have no idea. My brain is gonna go blank, and I'm gonna forget all the books I love, and I love books. Okay.
The Bible.
Don't try to list off 2 or 3. You just give us one.
The professional books that would be the most valuable. I literally am going blank on professional books. I can only think of fiction books right now.
You're in summer mode.
Well, professional, it could be a psychology book. I mean, it could be something like like, it doesn't have to be like business book. But
Yeah.
it's a book to be, to be a good business person, you gotta be a good human being. You gotta
Yeah,
be
true.
enlightened.
Okay, so a book that I don't know. I read Untamed like multiple times. That's like a very.
There we go. Untamed. You've read it multiple times.
That's not going to be my professional recommendation for everyone to read Untamed, but especially I think women would really benefit from that book. But can I do a follow up to what my favorite book is? What?
Deborah, are you familiar with Untamed?
Uh-huh.
Yeah, I'm not.
Have you read it?
So,
Yeah.
no.
I wouldn't think you had read it yet, Dave.
No,
We'll have to send you a
I don't
copy.
recommend it for you, Dave.
Yeah.
Okay. Noted.
It did make me a better person.
The best one on trust, I think, is, besides Todd Duncan's High Trust book, but Daring to Trust. I don't know if you've read. It's kind of more of a relationship.
That's a
but
great, yeah.
Yeah.
So good.
Mhm.
All right,
Yeah.
guys. We hope you got value from this. If you did, give it a like. Make sure you reach out to Kristin, connect with her on social media. If you haven't already subscribed to the Mortgage Coach YouTube channel, like, do it today. We're trying to get to 20,000 subscribers by the end of the year, and we're on pace. I mean, I would love to get there by the end of the month. So, share it with your mortgage friends, connect in our Facebook group, and this is a wrap. We'll see you on Tuesday. Take care, everybody.
All right, thanks everyone.
Thank you, Kristin.